me introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Bill Klein. Not only is he an entrepreneur that has grown successful businesses not only in the healthcare, but also in the retail space. He's a bona fide inventor with a patent in the pet product space, an author, this is how you all will remember him, a co-star and executive producer of TLC's hit television show, The Little Couple. He attributes his success to his upbringing and his ultra supportive spouse and his humor. He has a degree in biology from New York University. So he has humor, he's smart. Hey, you're just like the total package there. Besides, and he runs a successful business and he's a TV star. Okay, woo, yeah. Okay, all this aside, his crowning achievement is becoming a parent to the most amazing children in the world, Will and Zoe. Yeah. And you're a dad, so you can go to our new Dad's Track. Come back next year and facilitate the Dad's Track. Today, Bill and his family live in St. Petersburg, Florida. He manages his business with a regular travel to both Houston and China, always participating on the conference call while enjoying life closer to the water and extended family. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Bill Klein to the stage.
I got it. I'm on.
All right,
Thank you very much, Lori.
And he's going to stay for questions and answers, so.
That's right, I think. All right, I didn't go anywhere yet. Don't get nervous. Don't call the police. All right. I don't know if my speech is better than the applause I just got, so let's just end it here. Right? No? All right. Let's see. I have something here. A thing. It's supposed to make this work. All right. Well, first I'm going to have to put on glasses. This takes me a little bit. Anybody wants to get coffee? Yeah, get comfortable, lay down a little bit. All right. So, you know what? Far enough away for me to be able to see. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here today. It is an honor to be a part of the 21st Annual Family Cafe, and I am thrilled to be here with everyone. Thank you very much to Lori Fahey and to the team for putting this program together. You know, Lori sent me an email about a couple of weeks ago, and it had a link to the program for the Family Cafe. And I was wondering how many months it was going to go on for, because that program is huge. So I read through it, and I was truly enamored with what you guys are doing here, both as participants, what you're dedicating your time to, and to the folks that are running the programs, the time and energy, the thoughtfulness behind the programs that you guys are putting forth. It's amazing. It's something that needs to continue to happen, not just in Florida, but everywhere. And I wish it had been around when I was a kid, which was way, way long ago. Notice the gray hair. You know, one of the things that I think is often overlooked, and my mom reminds me of this every time I see her, is the dedication that family has to folks with disabilities. So what I'd like to do is thank everybody here that are family members of people with disabilities in this audience. Yeah, exactly. You know, especially the folks that have a child or sibling or spouse that you're involved in their daily care. It takes a lot to help someone move through life when they have a lot of obstacles in their way, and you guys are instrumental in helping all of us achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So thank you very much for that. When I was growing up, my parents got divorced. My mom was overburdened with the challenges of finding a job at 32. She was promised the ability to stay at home, and things change, life happens. And so she was my primary caregiver when I was in the hospital. She was taking care of my 2 younger brothers. She was looking for a job. She got her associate's degree while she was taking care of all of us and working during the day. When I needed surgery, she was there. And in fact, when I was in grade school, my mom made such a stink at the PTA when they weren't taking care of me at school and making accommodations that someone on the board of the PTA said something kind of funny. They said, you think you could do it better? Why don't you join the board of directors? So she did. She took over the PTA. That was a mistake on their part because she lit that place on fire. Not literally, don't worry. There's no arson issues. But she did a lot of great things for that school. And a lot of great things for me personally, which of course she was a tremendous advocate for me and my disabilities and what I needed in order to achieve my goals, but also the kids that came through that same institution after me. So there were a lot of things that needed to be done, and she was one of those pioneers that started that process. So for people like her, all of you, I thank you very much for being who you are. All right. So let's turn on this machine here. All right. I know, right? So let's stop the presses and start with the psychology conversation. I'm going to make like I'm on the couch, and we can all talk about me. So one of the things I run into often is this question: how do you overcome the obstacles that keep popping up in your way? Some of them are physical. Some of them are emotional. Some of them have nothing to do with me. They're out of my control. But how do you overcome them? And the answer is simple. I was born adorable. Okay? Apparently, at one point, I liked going to the beach, as you can see from this picture. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if that's the beach bod that I should have been showing. To say the least, it hasn't improved either. But that being said, the hair, I think, is what did it. I think if my parents were looking to distract everybody from my stature, mission accomplished. That hair, I don't know what they were thinking. But it was the 70s, so, you got to give them a little bit of a break. But thankfully, my folks did give me more than just an awful haircut to get by in life. They shared some of their trade secrets that they used to get by, and I'm going to share them with you today. So let's start with me. In case you don't know me, my name is Bill Klein. I was born on Long Island, New York. We say on, not in, if you're from Long Island. I don't know if anybody is. Any Long Islanders? Transplants, No? All right, just me? Just you guys? All right, cool. Over there? All right, so we got a few more. Perfect. Well, I was born in Port Jefferson, for those of you that are from Long Island. Seriously? Oh, cool. Did you go to Port Jeff or did you go to Comstock? Port Jeff? Oh, very cool. Nice. I went to Comstock. I was south of the tracks. No, it's a thing. Yeah, totally. Well, medicine back in the 70s wasn't exactly awesome. And so when I was born, it was kind of a surprise. My mom didn't know what was going on. The doctor freaked out, grabbed me, and took me into another room. And then my mom didn't see me for weeks. She was dealing with, all the stuff that happens after you've had an emergent birth. And on top of that, she was having some trouble dealing with the fact that her son, her first son, had some major medical complications. I was born hypoxic. I was like black and blue, at least that's what they tell me. I was not breathing when I was first born. They had to resuscitate me. And I had a tough time for a few weeks where they didn't think I was going to actually make it. But I'm stubborn, and so I persevered. my mom brought me to a hospital in Nassau County because none of the docs at the local hospital were really armed with the knowledge to take care of someone like me, someone with a skeletal dysplasia. As a matter of fact, they didn't even know what I had. So she brought me to this place called Nassau County Medical Center. It's another institution in New York. Not bad, not great, but, you know, decent. So while a team of doctors evaluated, poked, prodded, tried to figure out what I was all about, what made me tick, my mom was in the waiting room, which is kind of how they did it back then. You know, the parents or, you know, your loved ones all stayed outside, and the doctors poked you with, you know, sharp objects. I don't know how scientific that was. While she was sitting in the waiting room, she picked up a Reader's Digest. Some of you guys, I'm sure, have read this. It's a little periodical that they kept in the waiting rooms at hospitals all the time. So she's reading through one of these articles, and it's talking about this miracle doctor that takes care of people with skeletal dysplasias, people that sound a lot like what I have. So she takes the article, tears it out of the book, and leaves the appointment pretty much the same as she walked in, not knowing anything. I'm a complete mystery. What are we going to do? So she goes down to Baltimore, Maryland, to see this doctor. We meet with him. We have a chance to sit with him for about 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, he was able to diagnose me, map out a plan for my care for the next 20 years. Surgery, problems, behavioral stuff, emotional stuff, things that are going to come up because of my stature, because of the bullying, because of my size, all those things that, that my mom didn't even contemplate because she, frankly, didn't know how tall I'd be. So we found our doctor, our miracle man. His name was Dr. Stephen Kopitz. He was the physician that wound up being the physician for, I'd say, about 90% of little people in the country for the past 40 years. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2002, 2003, something like that. He was a brilliant physician. He was a pioneer in the field, and thankfully, he was able to write down a lot of the knowledge that he gained working with a small population like mine. Pun intended. We're a free room here. We can make jokes. It's good. So we got my diagnosis, but we went a little bit further. We did some genetic testing, and we found out that I'm actually a different type of skeletal dysplasia than even he had guessed. The mutation that made me short is actually one that had never been defined before. So I am standing before you as 1 in a billion people. I know. Pretty wild, right? Now, it's not good for a care plan, but it's good from a braggy perspective. So Mom did what most moms would do in her position. She treated me no differently when she got all this news, but she always encouraged me to use what God gave me to excel. And as I grew up, I began to appreciate more and more the fact that in order for me to get ahead, I wouldn't be able to use my stature, my physicality. I would have to use my head. So that was the pragmatic solution we focused on. Academics and studying, working towards getting good grades. What I didn't realize then, and what my parents were giving me some tools that I needed to do, was to think big. So we're going to move forward with thinking big. That is my motto. So it sounds kind of goofy, and it is to a certain degree. But Think Big is an acronym that my wife and I came up with a long time ago, actually before kids. And we were talking about how do we approach an obstacle. Different types of obstacles. Obviously, you have a toolbox of things that help you handle problems. But there are some things that are more universal. So how we approach it. Do we try? Do we hope for the best? Do we take the initiative to take on a new task? Do we listen to the no's or do we not listen to the no's? Now this one's a little confusing. Do we know our capabilities and our limitations? Do we believe when there's nothing else but the ability to believe in something? Are we always looking to improve? And are we going to go for it? So Think Big isn't just an apropos acronym for a short speaker. It's a philosophy my wife and I, and now our kids also, live by. We didn't always approach challenges with this motto in the back of our heads, but we've been practicing some parts of it for a really long time. While that, no matter what the obstacles you face, Think Big can help you approach them with optimism and courage. We're all faced with challenges, mental and physical challenges, challenges at work and school, challenging relationships, challenging family members, money issues, friendship issues, difficult decisions to make, and how we share our limited amount of time that we have on this planet. How we meet those challenges has a lot to do with whether or not we succeed in overcoming them. So, we're going to start off with try. When I was about 5 years old, I got my first bike. It was metallic blue, 10-inch wheels, a big brown leather seat, and it was made in Italy. It took a long time for my dad to find it. He and my grandfather had driven all over Manhattan looking at bicycle stores and asking the same question: do you have a bike that's smaller than the one that's in the window? And they struck out a lot. For about 6 months, they were looking around for a bicycle, and I needed something to ride. All my friends were starting to learn how to ride. I needed a bike. Finally, they found it. They ordered it. It came in from Italy. It was a 10-inch bicycle. It folded in half. It had like a wing nut in the middle, and you could fold the bicycle in half and put it in like a glove compartment. That's how small that bike was. It was awesome. It was perfect. Well, almost perfect. Anyway, my dad brought it home from New York. He took it on the train, the LIRR, out to Port Jeff, and wrapped it up. And of course, that Christmas was the most awesome Christmas ever. I found that bike sitting underneath the tree, kind of thinly veiled with paper. It wasn't wrapped very well. And now all I had to do was figure out how to ride it. So my dad took me outside, and I trotted to the sidewalk like a jockey with his racehorse, kind of excited, a little nervous, a little unsure of myself. And the bike was kind of custom, but I couldn't reach the ground. So my dad was nice enough to help me learn how to ride a bike, which I'm in the process of doing with my kids right now. So I get up on the bicycle, I put my feet on the pedals, and my dad's holding the back of the seat firmly. I implored him to not drop me every moment of this experience. I start pedaling, and the moment he lets go of the seat, I drift to the left and crash right into the bushes. I was not happy. I was hoping for instant success. It did not work out that way. So I got back on the bike, we turned it around, we're heading north now. I thought maybe north is the way to go, So I got back on the bicycle, my pop grabs the back of the seat, holds me steady, pedal. Before he even lets go, I start leaning to the left, crash right into the grass. I was a little perturbed at this point. We tried it a couple more times, but I think the toughest part about it was learning to appreciate the failure and understanding how to use that encouragement to try again. And so in the few weeks that followed, I didn't really get on the bike too much. And the times that I did, I didn't do very well. So several weeks had passed, and then I kind of gave up. Then there was a day that came that I was kind of dreading the entire time that I was trying to ride a bike. It was my friend Andrea. She knocked on the door. Guess what? I learned how to ride. I'm like, son of a gun. I slammed the door in her face. Rude, I know. But I thought it was rude that she learned how to ride a bike without me. We had talked about, the freedom that a bicycle was going to give us. I'm going to ride my two-wheeler, all around the neighborhood. Mom's never going to find us. It's going to be awesome. And that was what I was hoping for. And of course, my friend beat me to the punch. So all of a sudden, I found new enthusiasm, new vigor to go out and get on that bike again. So I walked through the dark garage, no light bulb was working, tripping over everything, opened up the garage door, dragged my dad out to the curb again, said, we're going to do this. That's it. Got back on the bike. He held the bike. I went down the block, pedal. He let go, crashed right into the bush again. I know, it doesn't end that way, though, so that's the good news. If I didn't try, of course, I wouldn't have learned how to ride that bike. I wouldn't have been able to hang out with all my friends and keep up with everybody. And I wouldn't have been able to experience that freedom, that joy of being without my family, just with my friends, on my own, and growing. So I would implore you that if you ever have the opportunity to do something that you think is futile, that you're not going to succeed in, give it another try. You never know when you're going to wind up riding down that block, driving up to your friend's house, knocking on the door and saying, I did it too. Drop the mic. All right. Let's see here. Oh, gratuitous picture. All right, so yeah, this one's a pretty good one. This is my better side. So this is just a quick note about inclusion. This has nothing to do with trying or think big. One of the buzzwords that I'm sure all of you have been hearing over the past few years has been the word inclusion. It's been going on for some time, but it wasn't always like that. But what I can tell you is that my family and my friends made a strong effort to include me in all of the things that they did when I was around. Whether it was wiffle ball, or if it was swimming or bicycle riding or just playing in the backyard, hide and seek or whatever. As I got older, when I became an adult and having conversations, people would bend down so that I could actually hear the conversation instead of me just nodding and smiling and not knowing a word of what they said. Inclusion is paramount to being able to grow as a person, be able to grow those relationships, and to feel like you're part of something. So I encourage you to insert yourself where you can, be bold, and surround yourself with people that are apt to include you in the process. It makes for a much more fun afternoon. All right, so, this guy, Wayne Gretzky, he came up with this great phrase. It's, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which I think is a brilliant commentary on trying. If you don't try, you will never score. So be bold, be ready to fail, and keep trying. Hope. So that's Superman in that picture. So first you have to make that attempt, right? You have to try. But you need to have a direction too, a way to focus your attempts to reach your goals. And that's where hope comes in. Sometimes hope is all about positive stuff. It's, hoping for the new job. It's hoping for that girlfriend to say yes. It's hoping to win the lottery. But then there's also hope when you have nothing else, when times are toughest. Now, the story I'm going to share with you today is more of the latter. This is not a sad story, but it's a story about a tougher time in my life. So, this story begins with the adoption of my daughter, Zoe. For those that know her, she is adorable. We got her, she was 15 pounds. Thank you. So Zoe was born with skeletal dysplasia as well, called achondroplasia. It's a more, popular type of skeletal dysplasia. It's more prominent. It happens in about 1 in every 25,000 live births, plus or minus a few thousand, I guess. Certainly more prevalent than my type of skeletal dysplasia. And my son, William, has the same type of skeletal dysplasia as well. But with respect to Zoe, this next story has a lot to do with her timing of coming home. So just before we got Zoe, Jennifer and I took our new son, William, to Cape San Blas, northern Panhandle, Florida. Anybody know that area? All right, there you go. You guys okay with the whole Michael thing? We have an uncle up there. He lost a lot. Yeah, I'm sorry. So we were up at Cape San Blas, not too far from where Hurricane Michael did their damage there. And we had a chance for a little R&R. We had a lot of fun. We had too much fun, as a matter of fact, because I wound up getting my wife pregnant. All right, it's a mixed age crowd, so I know you can't be too laughy. But what wound up happening is, first we freaked out. We were like, we just got Will. We're about to go get Zoe, and now you're pregnant. We're going to go from 0 to 3 in a year. That's crazy. But unfortunately, or I guess as fate would have it, the pregnancy wound up not being viable. So we took Jennifer to the doctor. She wound up getting D&C. They found it was a molar pregnancy, and they had to remove the tissue that was inside. So they removed the tissue, and we monitored her human chorionic gonadotropin, I think it's called. It's the pregnancy hormone that increases when you're pregnant. And we were looking for it to go down because she wasn't pregnant anymore. And it was doing exactly what it was supposed to do, going down, down, down. So we get the phone call, you've been greenlit to travel to India. Super. Let's pack our bags and go. We booked our flights, everything's looking good. We got our blood work back, everything's, lined up. We hop on a plane, we head on off to India, we land in Mumbai, we pick up our daughter. Jennifer comes out of the bathroom in the hotel and she says, something's not right. I'm bleeding a lot. And India is a great place, but it is not the place for cutting-edge healthcare. So we happen to know a couple of people that were local. Jennifer goes and takes a visit with one of the OB-GYNs that works there, gives her an examination, says, you need to go home now. Her hemoglobin was down to 8 point something. Below 8 is you don't live much. So she was close to not making it home. So I made the executive decision of sending my wife home with a security guard and getting treatment back at Texas Children's, where she was taken care of in their women's center. It was a tough time for me. I needed to send her home because I wanted her to be around once we got back from India. But it was a scary time because my daughter, as awesome as she is, really didn't like me at all. She, and it didn't end in India either. When we got her at the orphanage, she clearly had a problem with the separation from the institution. And I was relying heavily on my wife for that care because Zoe was bonding with Jennifer and refused to do anything with me. She wouldn't even stay in the same room as me. So that was pretty tough. And then I sent my wife home to be cared for, and I was left solo. Talk about crash course in parenting. Here, I'll show you the picture. It's easier to, the picture says 1,000 words. There's me. So my wife was on a plane for that picture. The middle one, this is a fantastic explanation. This is not the happiest slide in my arsenal here. So the one on the left is me crying in the bathroom at 3 a.m. I was tracking my wife's flight back from New Delhi to New Jersey, and I tried to convince my wife via text message that I was handling it well. That was the best picture I could come up with. Then there's the middle picture. Now this takes a little bit more of an explanation. So my wife needed to go home, right? Jen's not doing well. I gotta get her out of here. She writes a little note, puts it in her breast pocket, says, "This is the way you can revive me if I die on the plane, if I lose too much blood, and I need you to take care of me." She's crazy. She just got on a plane with a Post-it that says this instructions on how to keep me alive, if they needed it. And then there was little darling Zoe. Well, Zoe needed to get her passport, and we needed to move on and get home. So I needed to take a picture. A 2x2, no smile, no closing eyes, no wearing glasses. I got to see both ears. This was her passport photo. It was, it was awesome, I put her on a chair in the hotel room in New Delhi, and I had some security personnel with us. I have a television show you guys know about, and so with TV and the crew and all that fun stuff, we get a lot of attention when we're out and about. And so they gave us security to, make sure that we didn't get into trouble. Well, this guy, he's 6'4", flat top, whatever South African Marines are called, like, Green Beret type guys. He was enormous. He looked like a refrigerator. Like it should have said Frigidaire instead of, it was unbelievable. So first I had to take the picture. So he's holding her, and I'm taking the picture, and she's screaming. And then I'm holding her, and he's taking the picture, and she's screaming more. So then we put her down, and she was still screaming. We took the picture from inside. This is the one we got. My wife landed in New Jersey. She flew back to Houston. She started care. Her doctors said, hey, blood work came back. That molar pregnancy has turned into choriocarcinoma. Choriocarcinoma is a type of cancer that infiltrates the uterine wall, and if you are very unlucky, it moves quickly and it gets into your bloodstream and it goes to all sorts of other magical places like your liver, your lungs, and your brain. And so I started to get very, very upset. I said, we need to get home. So I brought Zoe to the embassy to expedite the paperwork. I got to the embassy, I had my security guy with me, and I had Zoe. So it's 4-foot-tall white guy, 7-foot-tall monster, it looks like Shrek, and then this screaming little Indian girl that would not be quiet. And all these aunties, Indian women that, affectionately we call aunties, are walking by, and they're all saying, do you need help? And I'm like, no, it's fine. She's like, no, it's not fine. And I said that no less than 100 times, sitting in the waiting room. They called my name. They said, we'll probably not be able to finish up your adoption visa today. We'll have to see you on Monday. I said, okay, well, we're not gonna leave. And they said, well, you're gonna have to. And so they had security come in and ask us to leave. And my security was bigger than their security. So we sat back down, and they kept the one window open. Everything else was turned off. All the lights were out. Just this one window with this one little teller hole that you could see people moving in the back. They were working on my daughter's visa. Finally, we get it. It's Friday afternoon. We call up the travel agency, said, move the flights. Let's get home tomorrow. Tomorrow was booked, so we got on the next flight out was Sunday morning. Hopped on the plane. Flew to Jersey, just like Jennifer, followed in her path, back to Texas, and got home. We got in the car, got all the way to the house, and we have a production company with us. They wanted to see Zoe's first reaction to her new home. My son, of course, was over it. He just wanted to go home. And so we had the crew. We had my nanny, Kate, who we hired probably a couple months after we got Will, since we started going back to work. And so we had our little team, and Jennifer wasn't home. She was staying with her dad and her mom because she was immunocompromised at this point. She had started an aggressive chemotherapy regimen to try and get rid of this cancer. So she wasn't anywhere to be found. We walk in the door. I'm exhausted, the kids are exhausted, the crew's exhausted, Kate's exhausted, everybody's miserable. So we catch this little video of Zoe walking in, and very anticlimactic. She basically just laid down on the floor and sucked her fingers. I was like, okay, well, good night. So I escort the crew to the door, I kick them all out. Kate, I send home so she can rest for a couple weeks and recover from this nightmare of travel. And it was just me and the kids. And it was finally starting to get a little quiet, and I hear a knock at the door. And it was my wife. She had been staking out the place. She was in her dad's Jeep, sitting around the corner, waiting for the crew to leave. She didn't want to be, seen by the crew, because then we'd have to put a microphone on her and wait until she got hair and makeup and, get all prettied up so that she could be on camera. She's not that way, but, she wasn't dressed to be on TV. She was dressed to get chemotherapy. And so she hung out in the car. She waited until everybody left, and then she came to the door, I'm like, this camera guys, when are they going to leave? What'd they forget? And lo and behold, it's Jennifer. The kids come bum rushing the door. They're standing up against the glass, faces smushed, all that stuff. And, she was immunocompromised, so we couldn't open the door. She was still feeling sick. She had the mask on and all that fun stuff. But there she stood, strong as could be, immovable, there for her kids, there for her husband. And in that moment, something came over me. For a while, I was losing hope. My kid doesn't, want to be around me. My wife is getting taken care of in a hospital in Texas, and I don't know whether or not she's going to make it through this. I knew that the cancer had spread to her lungs already, and it was scary. When you hear stage 3 and stage 4 cancer, it's not good. I started to lose hope. That was until she showed up. She showed up, she showed me what strength really was. She showed me what hope really was. She restored hope for me. I was only able to get through that tough time. I am not that strong a person. Most men aren't. No offense, guys. But it was her strength that gave me hope. So, when in doubt, surround yourself with stronger people and let them give you hope. And that Zoe, eventually, she did turn around. And they are fish in the water, by the way. It's ridiculous. I can't keep up with them. Hopefully they'll save me if I'm drowning one day. All right, so what are you going to hope for? What do you hope for? Personally, do you hope for love? Do you hope for happiness and health? Professionally, do you have professional goals you're hoping to reach? I think it's our duty as stewards of humanity to always continue to hope, to strive for better. This is especially true when times are tough. We need to keep hope alive in the world around us. All right, so moving on to things that are less serious. Initiate. So, did you know that Thomas Edison invented and has over 1,000 patents in his lifetime? 1,000 utility patents. I don't even think I can read 1,000 utility patents. He dedicated his life to invention, to making this world a little bit better of a place. The light bulb, the phonograph, Morse code, all those fun things came from, Morse came from Morse, but there were a number of things that he had invented that were just absolutely amazing. And you might imagine that without initiative, he wouldn't have invented those things, and we would all be in the dark, right? So, for a person to initiate is initiative, having initiative, moving forward. And for me, I had to have some initiative in order to move forward with my little project. So, Houston, we have a problem. It's not because I invented a rocket. I don't work at NASA. I just happened to live in Houston when I came up with this idea. Jennifer and I moved to Houston in 2008 for a job over at Texas Children's that she was pursuing. We brought our cute little adorable fuzzy chihuahua named Rocky with us. He's awesome, but he is also a male, and he was not very well trained, and that's my fault. I know it. I'll own it. And he was marking everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything. The house was white, it's now yellow. So, I'm convinced if you stood still long enough, he would probably pee on your leg too. Since I was working at home, I had a consulting business. I was working as a medical device consulting guy. So I'd work with companies like GE and Siemens Healthcare, and I'd teach them how to sell better. So I'd work from home, and I had this tiny little office carved out in the corner of our apartment. And my dog would walk all over the place while I was on the phone, stuck on a conference call, or, tethered to my computer. And he was, lifting his leg on just about everything in the house. And it was driving me crazy. I would literally have to hang up the phone, and I'd look around all over the place to see where he went, where he did his business. Kind of gross, right? So I finally figured out that one of his favorite targets was the chair leg in our kitchen. And I said, you know what? I'm tired of cleaning this floor. So I put a pee pad underneath the kitchen chair leg. I said, you know what, at least I won't have to clean the floor anymore. I'll just clean the chair leg. Now, it's still kind of gross, Didn't really fix my problem the way I wanted it to. So for a moment I was thrilled, but it didn't really solve the problem. Then I realized that Rocky hadn't shut off his hose until he was already a few feet away from that pad. So every time he would go to the bathroom, he would pee on the chair leg, it would leak onto the floor, and then he'd walk away before he was done and make a little Zorro all the way down the hallway. It was really gross. So, he just didn't understand his place in space. Let's see here. There's Rocky. Okay. And there's Will with Rocky, and now Rocky's best friend is my daughter Zoe. But William was the first to take on the responsibility of not teaching Rocky, but I think teaching him where to pee. So Rocky's adorable, but he's a menace. He was tearing up the chair legs, and I would regularly have to retrace his steps around the house to see where he went. I couldn't simply let him out while I was on a call, and his bladder was too small to predict that when he was going to go to the bathroom, so none of this was working. So nearly a year had gone by where I was doing this, under the chair thing, and then I had an epiphany, What am I going to do? I said, if I could just come up with a way for me to get the dog to pee in the center of the pad, I'd be all set. So I had this great idea conceived, and I said, okay, now who's going to make it for me? Nobody did. So after a few years of doing absolutely nothing with my brilliant idea, I finally found that thing called initiative. And so I began the process of developing prototypes. I met my brother Joe, who's actually in Melbourne, Florida. I went on over to his place. I was here. I was at this hotel for a convention for the pet industry. And so I met up with Joe. I said, you know what, I have this idea. I think it would be great for the pet industry. We need to make some prototypes. So we went to PetSmart or Petco, picked up a bunch of pet training pads, cut them up with scissors. It turned into like an arts and crafts project. We did a bunch of prototypes, gave it to Rocky, and lo and behold, that little dude peed right on the pad. I was like, this is money. Yay! I love money, right? Plus, I don't like cleaning, so, a marriage. And so we went through the process of prototyping and all that fun stuff. Went to a patent attorney. Patent attorney said, so what do you have? And my brother unfolds the pad, and a little fire hydrant pops up in the middle, and he's like, oh, I get it. That's awesome. So we started the patent process. Finally, we got the patent. We expedited the whole process. We defended it. We argued for it. We, told them why it was a unique item and why it was going to revolutionize the pet industry. That may have been a little too much, but it was a good product. And so we executed and we moved on. And after that, we went to the trade show, the same trade show. The following year, it was 2017. We made 1,000 prototypes and handed them out at the show. My brother had Band-Aids all over his fingers because he was doing the part where you cut, and he apparently was drinking or something. I don't know. He cut himself a lot. And so we had all these prototypes. Everybody ate them up, loved it, thought it was the greatest idea in the world, and we moved on from there. So initiative sometimes cures a little problem. Sometimes it cures a big problem. Sometimes it's a pain point for everyone. It turns out that I have about 50% of people that own pets like mine have the same problem at home. Nobody wants to admit it, of course, because that's gross. But they're all dealing with it. And if I can help them make that go away quietly, no problem. So, how will you initiate? That is the question. So, my daughter Zoe is often afraid of stepping over gaps. She's afraid she's going to fall into them. So this playground is actually a playground that's made for folks with disabilities. So it's equal opportunity play is the way I looked at it, because it accommodated people in wheelchairs, people that were short, people that were tall, average-sized kids, you name it. Everybody could play. And they had a couple of gaps in the playground that she just was petrified of. So she would get up to that gap and she would stop. And it would take either me or my wife holding hands to finally coax her to get over it. We can't be afraid to take that first step. And for Zoe, it was just taking that little hop over that gap so that she can move on and have a lot of fun with all the friends that were playing on the other side. For her, it was a simple leap. For some of us, it's a big leap, but you have to take that leap in order to know where you're going to go. So, never listen to the no's. I'm sure you've heard no before, right? Who in here hasn't heard the word no? Yeah, trick question, right? That's like a Simon Says thing. No, just kidding. So, I know that I've heard no before. If you're a kid, your mom and dad have said no a lot. Your teachers have said no. For grown-ups, your boss has definitely said no. The bank has probably said no. And I guarantee your spouse has said no. A lot. I think my default button is no. So for the in-betweeners, the young adults, guess what? The dating scene, filled with no. All sorts of no. No, no thank you, no way, not in this lifetime, not if you paid me. That's a separate discussion. We're not getting into it. And we all can agree that the word no is hard to hear, and it's heard a lot. I want you to tune it out. No's can linger. This is one of the poorest analogies I've ever come up with, but no is like water that sits on a piece of wood. You know, it's innocuous at first, it's innocent, it's no big deal, but if you let it sit there, if you let it linger, it winds up rotting the wood. And so we want to make sure that you forget the no's. You've got to wipe that water right off the wood. So the quintessential sales slogan is every no gets you closer to a yes. Now, I told you I'm a bit of a sales guy. When I first jumped into the career world, I went into pharmaceutical sales, medical device sales. That was where I thought it was going to be. Back in the 90s, everybody that graduated from college with a degree in some hard science that wasn't smart enough for medical school, like Jennifer, went into pharma. And it was a great place to you get so many cool things in pharmaceutical sales. You get like a free car, you know, awesome. You get an expense account. You get to buy people sandwiches all the time, which is cool. You know, you're like a hero to every person that you feed at work. You know, it was a great job. And you get bonuses and a good competitive salary. So I thought that was where I wanted to be. So I began looking for a job. I drew up my resume and applied for the sales position with nearly 50 pharmaceutical companies. I didn't even know that there were 50 pharmaceutical companies until I started applying. On paper, I was an ideal candidate. Most of my interviews were fairly, innocuous, and, the few interviews, it became clear that the interviewer assumed that my limitations were more substantial than they were in actuality. There were a couple of interviews that stood out in particular that were borderline offensive, and I was never hired by any of these 50 companies that I applied to. In one particular interview, I remember the sales manager began asking questions that seemed, a bit out of line. He mentioned his concern that my stature might make doctors think less of the company. What? Yeah, exactly. He asked silly questions like, how are you going to get noticed in the waiting room when you have a whole bunch of other pharmaceutical sales reps sitting there waiting for the doctor's attention? And I'm thinking, another pharmaceutical sales rep could light themselves on fire and I'd still be the person that everybody remembers in that office. So I tried to implore them that, my physical differences actually were a benefit, that I wasn't looking to date the doctor, I was looking to sell him drugs, legal drugs, But, nonetheless, if I was snarky, if I was smart, if I was happy, if I was sad, didn't matter. I didn't get the job. I was still jobless 6 months later. I was working the midnight shift at a security company so that I could do interviews during the day. And I was sleeping on the job. It was pretty awesome. That's what most security guards do for the midnight shift, just in case you were curious. I was getting a little more snarky. I was getting a bit of an attitude because I didn't see why I was losing this opportunity. First, I started doubting myself. I was like, maybe it's my interview technique. Maybe I'm being too New York, Maybe it's my resume. Maybe it's not strong enough. Maybe everybody that's applying has a better resume. It's not like I was the smartest kid in school. That'd be cool. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't brush my teeth that morning. Probably not. I'm thinking I probably brushed them. I took stock in the interviews and I, reviewed what I did right and wrong. I tried to analyze it and, come up with a reason why, justify why I was striking out all the time. I made improvements where I thought it was prudent, and I always tried to keep a positive attitude. But unfortunately, the common trait among the jobs that I had applied for was that the field was dominated by, quite frankly, very attractive people. It's not that they couldn't do the job, but like Vegas, they were practically hiring models that could also sell pharmaceuticals. They were all like, the guys were prettier than the girls in some instances. I was like, what the heck is going on? I'm not a model. I know that. I'm not the most attractive person that was in that room, and I get that, but I didn't think that was a criteria for hiring. So in one of the interviews, instead of just a no, my suspicions were actually confirmed when the comment was made that I don't have the look they're looking for. I was like, that's probably illegal. I guess we'll end the interview here. Not much more to say, and that pretty much summed it up for me. But I couldn't just accept that this was my fate. I had to ignore the fact that they were not able to see what I was bringing to the table, and I had to forge ahead. So, let's see here. I was supposed to press this button a couple times. On the left are out of the top 10 agencies that I interviewed with, those were the ones that I got the first interview with. On the right is the single company that offered me a second interview, and those were the folks that said the awesome, complimentary things about my stature and not having the right look. So, needless to say, some of those guys up there did not do what they were supposed to be doing. All right, so moving on. It took me a while to figure out exactly what to say, but the obvious resistance and the rejection I experienced over time caused me to decide I needed to take a different tactic. I needed to, approach the next interview in a way that I hadn't before. I wasn't leaving without addressing the elephant in the room. So I opened up that part of the interview with, I'm sure you've noticed I'm a bit shorter than the average person. I'm not shy about my stature, and I'd be more than happy to address any intelligent questions you have, whether it's about my personal experiences or how I'd perform my work. The first time around, it wasn't nearly that polished. Second time got better. Third, fourth, fifth, 17th, 109th, whatever it was. Certainly a lot better. But it wasn't until my 51st interview that I finally found my way. It was with a medical device company based on Long Island that was hiring for an inside sales position. Now, the funny part about this was that my first interview was a phone interview. Because it's an inside sales job, you're making phone calls. And you do key account travel. So you travel around the country when it was necessary, but for the most part, you conducted yourself like a stockbroker. So not exactly, I didn't get the free car, I didn't get to buy everybody sandwiches, but I had a job. So I was pretty excited about this opportunity. The guy didn't know that I was short over the phone because my voice doesn't, I don't know if you can tell how tall somebody is by their voice. So I get the interview, the in-person interview. He says, come on down, we'll meet on Thursday. So I hop in the car on Thursday. I get, my gray suit on. I dress up. I tie my double Windsor, which without Google, that was hard to do. Let me tell you. I got dressed up. I went to the interview. I showed up. I got out of my dad's station wagon that he let me borrow for interviews. 1987 Pontiac 6000 SE, maroon with microfiber interior. And when I got out of the car, I walked along the front sidewalk, and all you could see is hair moving through the window. The receptionist sees me walk in the door, gives me the application, and then disappears. Now, I didn't find out until later on, but what had happened was she was shocked, amazed, scared, whatever, about me. My presence mortified her. And so she ran into the boss's office and said, your 11 o'clock's here. It's a midget. Yeah, not good. Yeah, no. Thankfully, I didn't have to work for her. So, he was a good guy, though, my soon-to-be boss. He said to her, hey, do me a favor, don't ever say that again. He said, do me a favor. Thank you. He did more than that, though. He took it a step further. He said, on your way out to give that guy his application and take care of him, see if he needs anything, tell everybody else that's in the bullpen, these, seasoned sales reps that are all cutthroat, ex-stockbroker types, mean, obnoxious, wealthy jerks. Tell them if they say anything, they're fired and they can pack their stuff and leave today. Right. So I got into the office, filled out the application, sat down with the boss, and, we were talking about all sorts of things. None of it had to do with my size. None of it had to do with much of anything, really. We just had a dialogue. What do I like? What's my interest? What are my favorite movies? What are my favorite books? What makes me tick? All that fun stuff. I said, I should probably address the fact that I'm short. He's like, okay. So, I'll probably, need to rent a car with hand controls. He's like, is that available? I said, yeah, I think so. It wasn't as polished as it is today, by the way. It was kind of an act of Congress in order to get it done, but we did it. I said, well, I'll probably need somebody to help me carry some stuff around every once in a while if it's, really big. So, yeah, all right, me too. Is there anything else? I said, no. It's like, out of curiosity, do you drive your car with coffee in your hand when you come to work? I said, yeah. He's like, how the hell do you do that? It's like, because I had a wheel spinner and hand controls, and so push-pull for the gas and brake, and the knob to steer the wheel. He's like, so what hand do you use to do the coffee? So, well, I use my knee for the wheel, and then I use the hand for the gas and the brake, and then I hold the coffee. He's like, do you smoke cigarettes? I said, well, on occasion. I just graduated college, so that's a habit I have to kick. And he's like, do you do it while you're drinking coffee? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can we go to lunch? I said, sure. So we stopped the interview. He's like, oh, by the way, you're hired. Let's go grab lunch. We'll go to my favorite place. It's this place called Pace's Steakhouse. My buddy Jimmy owns the place. We're going to go eat. We'll celebrate. We get in the car, and he's like, all right, so I'm a smoker. Do you mind if you smoke a cigarette right now? I'm like, right now? I just got to see this. So I demonstrated for him the ability of someone that has an interest in hurting themselves and caffeinating themselves simultaneously while driving a 5,000-pound vehicle 70 miles an hour down the highway. Needless to say, sometimes he made poor decisions too. So the point of this story is I don't want you to listen to the no's. No's are everywhere. People say it as a gut reaction. It's their first instinctual thing to do. Don't oblige me to do or commit to anything. And what I will implore you to do is to not listen to the no. My advice is if someone tells you you can't do it or that you shouldn't, follow your heart and don't listen to them. Write down all your hopes and don't let anything, circumstances, fear of the unknown, or others taking it away from you, don't let them win. Without hope, big or small, life isn't worth living. And if you listen to all the no's, that's exactly what will happen. All right, so this is where it gets confusing, because the next no is know your limitations. So up until this point, I've been talking about all this positive stuff. I want you to try hard. I want you to hope for everything. Don't listen to the no's. Initiate. Be positive. All that fun stuff. And now I'm gonna be the Debbie Downer and tell you, we gotta all listen to, our heart and understand what our limitations are. But that's not exactly the point. So, I like this quote, by the way. Have you guys read it? It's from, Ann Landers? Know yourself, don't accept your dog's admiration as conclusive evidence that you're wonderful. How many people in this room have a pet at home that they look for, some sort of support from? I do. I have 2, because 1 wasn't enough. So, I needed more support. But, I think it's important to understand that you are the only person that should be determining whether or not you should know what limitations you should be knowing. So, you're probably saying to yourself, all right, that kind of makes sense, but what's the deal? I want you to ignore the regular no's. Unless it's from your mom, you don't ignore that one. You're getting into trouble. But when it comes to knowing your limitations, it doesn't mean that you should stop trying to achieve any of the goals that you set forth to achieve. It just means that you need to address the things that are limitations properly so that you can still achieve your goals. And that you're the only one that can define your goals and your limitations. Nobody else knows you better than you. All right, stop laughing. I heard somebody laughing over there. Those aren't yoga pants, by the way. They look like yoga pants, though. Those are sweats. It was the late 80s and early 90s, so it's legit. This is a picture of me and my friend from high school. As you can see, we are on the opposite ends of the growth chart. He was captain on the football team, and he was a mountain of a man, like 6'3" or something like that. I wasn't either of those. But I did want to play football. But being 4 feet tall, I knew I wasn't going to make the high school football team. But I did want to stay involved. So how do I do that? Well, rather than, let the coach tell me that, I was too short to participate, I figured out a way that I could participate. I began working out in the weight room as my gym class. So while everybody else was playing kickball or, some other goofy sport, I was pumping iron like a monster. And that was my whole gym class. It was fantastic. I got into great shape. And after a while, I was one of the better weightlifters in the school. And it was kind of funny. I used to take money from the wrestling team, betting that I could lift more than they could. Of course, it was easy money, $20 at a time. They just put it up there, and it was like taking candy from a baby. But with a decent amount of experience under my belt, I volunteered to help out with their conditioning. So after school, the football team and the wrestling team would go down to the gym and they'd work out every day. And that was how I integrated myself into those team sports. I knew I couldn't wrestle, I couldn't, play football, I'd be murdered. But I could lift weights, I could teach people how to lift weights the right way, and I could be a part of the team. I wound up becoming great friends with this guy. You're probably wondering why we're wearing this. There is an explanation, it is reasonable. For those of you that are old enough to know what Hans and Franz were from... All right, so no explanation needed. It's an SNL skit that was done back in the 80s and 90s. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a monster, and he would show up as like cameo appearances on this skit that they would do. And so they were Hans and Franz, and they would, they were trying to be buff, but they were obviously they were just flabby. That's what they said, flabby. Well, we were stagehands for this show. It was called Night for Jason. It was a fundraiser that started a few years before I got into high school, and it was to help raise funds for leukemia, for childhood leukemia. One of the kids that had gone through that school passed away from leukemia, and his family put together this program, a fundraiser, and it's now in its, I think it's like 31st year or something. Unbelievable that it's been going on for as long as it has. So at the time, it was still kind of new, and I was much more shy back then. So I only wanted to be a stagehand. One of the guys that wears black, you don't see him, they turn off the lights in between variety acts, and I would move stuff around. Well, we were messing around with the microphone, setting up for one of our rehearsals. And Mike and I started riffing this Hans and Franz bit. And the guy that was running the theater program was laughing his butt off. I mean, he was on the floor rolling around. He's like, you have to do this. We reluctantly agreed, but we said, we're not changing, we're not doing, we're like prima donna actors or something. It was ridiculous. We wanted nothing to do with it, and we had to do it our way. But we agreed. We got on stage. We came up with this skit. It was hysterical. Some of it I can't even say because there's some young kids in the room, but oh my God, I'm surprised they let me get away with that in high school. Nonetheless, it was the hit of the night. I mean, everybody was, it was a roar, and it's still talked about today in that school. So we did something that was just so much fun, and it was all because of the dichotomy between my stature and his, and we played off of it in a way that was innocent, but still, called out the elephant in the room, and instead of being afraid of who I was and afraid of my difference, I had fun with it, and it was very liberating. So I encourage you, if you have an opportunity to be Hans or Franz, be Hans, he's better. All right, so you might be saying, what's the deal? All right, so from a young age, I knew that I loved sports. My wife, not so much, but we were offered an opportunity while we were in Houston. My wife made a pretty big name for herself in Houston. She was saving babies' lives and coming up with new programs that were getting attention from the city. And all of a sudden, I found myself on the pitcher's mound at the Astros game. And I'm like, well, this is kind of neat. I mean, for me, amazing. I mean, it would have been more amazing if it was the Yankees, but still amazing. And at the time, the Astros weren't doing as well as they're doing now. But I was hoping that I could play professional sports in some way, shape, or form when I was young, but, reality set in and it wasn't going to happen. But while my pitch did make it over the plate, it was like the biggest meatball you've ever seen. If there was somebody swinging a bat at it, it still would be in orbit. It was not good. But the opportunity to throw a ball out at a Major League Baseball game was something that I was super excited to do. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna work out for this. I am going to get buff in the gym again. We're gonna get the old Bill Klein back into shape. So I went to the gym. I met with a personal trainer. They call him Russell the Muscle. So weird. Russell sits down with me, says, okay, I talked to your doctors. I know exactly what your problems are. We're going to work around those. We're going to get you buff. We're going to get you ready for that first pitch out on the field. Great. So I start working out. I get a little overzealous. I said, we got to change it up a little bit. He said, all right, what are you thinking? I said, kettlebells. I've never used a kettlebell before. So he gets me a little 10-pound kettlebell. I said, oh, this is easy. This is no more than a case of beer. As far as weight's concerned, I can do this. So I go and lift it up. First lift, pinch in my back. I'm like, that's not what I was expecting. That's probably bad. So I put the kettlebell down, and I walked away from that exercise. 2 weeks later, I had to stop working out altogether. Turns out I did some major damage to my back, and my orthopedic issues that I brought with me to work out wound up being the reason why I did so much wrong. With a kettlebell, you're not supposed to lift with your back, you're supposed to lift with your knees. I did it the exact opposite way. My knees stayed exactly where they wanted to be, and my back did all the lifting one time. So it wasn't good, and all of a sudden I was no longer lifting weights. I found my limit, and I was still able to throw out that first pitch, but I did learn a tough lesson that day about how age and my disability helped me reevaluate some of my limitations, which you do need to do from time to time. So, how will you know, not your limitations, but your capabilities? When you're afraid to share some limitations or capabilities that you have, when others don't believe in you, when you don't have all the answers. Knowing our limitations is a sign of strength and courage, in my opinion. I knew I couldn't be a football player, but I knew I could still be part of that team. So, B is for believe. So think, we've been talking about all this fun stuff in our professional careers and moving forward, but there are certain things, particularly when it comes to your personal life, that you don't have as much control over. And that was, for me, love. I met Oprah Winfrey, by the way. Pretty cool. Yeah, Very nice lady. Not a lot of Oprah fans here, huh? Just kidding. I don't know her. So I was lucky to have the love and support of a wonderful family and many friends throughout different stages of my life. But I feared for a long time that I would never find love. Finding true love is something that you can't really control. It's difficult for pretty much everyone. Being a little person, I feared I'd never find love because my stature kind of precluded me. It filtered me out from a lot of people. You know, most women I talked to, even as early as high school, were like, looking for tall, dark, and handsome. And I kind of just turned around and walked away. I was like, oh, that kind of, there goes that interview. But I wasn't alone. And I knew that I wasn't alone. So I got to go back and talk to all the other guys that were also feeling the same way. But who would want to have their wedding dance on their knees was what I was thinking. I was thinking, there's no way that someone's going to want to spend the rest of their life with me. And unlike anything else I had wanted before, this was something that I couldn't fix. I could not just make someone love me. So what I realized is the only thing I could do is believe. Believe that one day I'd find true love and happiness. Let me tell you, I believed and believed and believed and believed and believed until my heart couldn't believe anymore. I went to those painful social gatherings like, dances, the prom, homecoming, all that fun stuff in high school. I went to bars to go pick up ladies and with all my buddies in college. I went to other social gatherings. I went to the library. I heard the library is a good place to go. Let's go there. Nope. That book was checked out. But at the parties and the dances, I would sit in the back, while everybody else was dancing, and I'd eat all the hors d'oeuvres off of all my buddies' plates. So I made the best of a good situation, But, things didn't improve, and, I went on some dates, but most of the time it was, two friends meeting up for dinner, not a date. But eventually, at the ripe old age of 31, nope, I think I went too fast. Yeah, all those pictures. At the ripe old age of 31, I did find true love. It started when I came across a website called datealittle.com. Catchy, right? This was a site created for little people to connect. Back then, it was kind of revolutionary. It was like, wow, there's a site that's dedicated to just us. Now every flavor, anything you're interested in, there's a site dedicated to, just those people, I just like people that like pink paint on their walls. Done. There's a website. Pinkpaintwalldating.com. But, the site, while it did encourage a couple of people that were more just creepy fetish people to show up, it also gave an opportunity for me to find people that I wasn't afraid of telling them who I was, putting myself out there, and having some dialogue. So I registered and I created that profile and began my search. At the time, it was cutting edge, and I was super excited. I got, emails that I could send out, and I could look at profiles and, do all that fun stuff. And that's when I stumbled across Jennifer's profile. I sent her an email. It was like December 2005. She didn't respond back. I was like, oh, well, I guess she's doing something. Excuse me just a second. I'm talking too much, apparently. So, she didn't write back to me. I was kind of bummed about it. And I was about to give up, and then all of a sudden, my inbox showed an email. I'm like, she responded. It said Jennifer Arnold. Super excited. I open up the email, and it's not a response to my email. It's just like a cold call. She sent me a pickup line. It said, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was along the lines of, hey, you look familiar. Have we met at an LPA convention? I was like, oh. And now LPA is Little People of America. It's a support organization. They host annual conventions similar to this to provide resources and education and support and also networking and all that fun stuff. And I hadn't been to one in years. And I was like, oh, well, clearly she's just using a pickup line here, and a pretty cheesy one at that. But I like cheese, so good news. So we started chatting via email, but email, you know how email is. You know, you're waiting for that response. Did I say something wrong? And then finally it comes back and it's not a lot of substance. And you're like, well, what do I do now? Then we started phone calls, and that's when we reached a crossroads. I was talking to her late at night. She was a fellow at UPMC in Pittsburgh, doing her rotation. She was on call. So she had worked the night before. She was really exhausted. She got home, called me, and I'm telling her about my day. Oh, yeah, super excited. Working with Siemens Healthcare, going to make lots of money. Like, no, really? She fell asleep. I mean, we haven't even dated yet, you know? We're still just talking. Apparently, I was talking. She was sleeping for the past half hour. And she just eked out a snore for me. And so I decided, all right, well, you know, if I'm going to make this thing happen, I got to be a little bit more aggressive. I got to have some initiative, right? So I buy a plane ticket. I said, you know, when am I going to come and see you? She says, the only weekend I have is my birthday weekend. My best friend is throwing a party for 50 of my closest friends. If you have the guts, you can come and see me. Challenge accepted. So I hopped on the plane, and you know, first thing I recall is standing on the sidewalk and hearing this horrible rumbling sound. It was like Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, cold. In Pittsburgh in March, it's cold. And so I'm standing out there with my overcoat on, freezing my butt off, and I hear this sound. And I'm like, what is that obnoxious sound? And I look, and I see a car that resembles a lot, it looks a lot like what she had described her vehicle to look like, except it was gray. Hers was white. Turns out this little car was making all this big noise. It was her vehicle. She was sitting in it, and her car is white, but it was so darn dirty that it looked gray. So as she pulled up, I finally noticed that it was her, because she has this tremendous smile, and I noticed it from her profile pictures. I was like, oh, thank goodness, this is her. And then all of a sudden, I was paralyzed. For those of you that have not experienced true love, love at first sight, you won't know what I'm talking about. You'll think I'm ridiculous and that I'm insane, I have a problem. But for those of you that have experienced love at first sight, oh my God, it's paralyzing, it's unbelievable, and it happened to me. I didn't know what to do. I was like, you know, this is the most amazing thing that's happened in my entire life. And all I could say was, hey, cool car. So, I should have come up with something more romantic, but I didn't. I hope that, you know, we would be moving forward to our next venue, our favorite place, and it's been our favorite place for the past 14 years, Starbucks. We went there for our first date, and I've been chasing Jen around the world, going to Starbucks in every country that we've ever been to since then. All right. Now, I'm probably going long, and I'm probably going to get into trouble soon, so I'll try and wrap things up here. You know, I guess from the perspective of believe, you know, one of the things I want you guys to take away from this is that, you know, hope and believe and manifesting your destiny is all about positive attitude. And for family members, the work that you do to help people like me get through life and achieve the goals for people that you care about most, it's an amazing thing. So you need to believe that everybody's able to accomplish those things as well. I have that same experience now. I'm now a parent of 2 kids that have disabilities that I need to show them the way. And I need to do it better with them than my parents did with me because, well, quite frankly, I've already lived it. So I should be able to do it better. That's my obligation. So for you, I'm hoping that you guys will be able to believe in things when you don't think you go any further, when you want to give up, when you think no one else believes in you or believes in what you believe in. But the nice part about believing is that it costs nothing, and it's a much better companion on that journey towards happiness than being alone. All right. I is for improve. For those that are keeping count, this is the second to last letter, and then I'll let you guys all go. So I'm a pretty blessed man. I've achieved a lot of success. I've had the fortunate opportunity to meet my love of my life. I have 2 wonderful kids that now love me back. It's easy to get comfortable and to want to sit back and enjoy, but that's not me. I'm pretty sure that complacency is a dangerous habit to cultivate, and we should always be looking to improve. So I've put together a little bit of a plan. First and foremost, I started taking care of business at work. I said, you know what, I'm going to improve some things around the office. So, we made some big changes at my pet store. I implemented something called omni-channel marketing. Ugh, it's a nightmare. But everybody's happy. My customers are happy. My staff is happy. Everything's working well. Made a big improvement. Everybody's happy with that. And my other business, my pet training pads, are selling like hotcakes, so I need to make some improvements there. Flew to China. Ate a lot of good food, made some improvements, and everybody's happy there. But something was missing. I've been so focused on work and the television show and production, schedules, carting the kids back and forth to extracurriculars. That something I've lost was my mindfulness, my being present in the here and now, enjoying what I'm doing here. And, Jen and I talk about this a lot because we're both dedicated to our jobs. We're pretty aggressive in that way. And we talk a lot about work-life balance. We want to give it our all, but we also want to be able to be there for our kids. So I noticed this issue with my last trip to Houston. My pet store is in Houston still. I went there for a week to work with my staff, and they needed me there. Things were going crazy. So I flew out and I spent some time there, but I became so consumed with work that something happened that it kind of got to me. It made me upset. What had happened was that I realized that at the end of the day, I forgot to call my kids. I got so stuck in what was going on that I lost focus of the 2 most important people on this planet to me, and it was all because I had lost that focus. I had lost that mindfulness. So the worst part about it, of course, was that I didn't even realize it until I got home. When I looked at them, I'm like, did you guys grow? And, their voices sounded different. Their vocabulary was better. I'm like, how long was I gone? It felt like it was a week, and it was, that I hadn't spoken to them. And I vowed that I wasn't going to let that happen again. I was going to be more mindful. I was going to, be present for my kids more than I ever was. So, I'm making some improvements. Cleaning house here. Specifically, I'm working on my mindfulness. I've committed to spending not just more time, but more quality time with my kids. Less agenda, more enjoyment. Being in the moment. The same goes for my better half. We both work long hours. And we've decided that we want to carve out some time for us. So, we've begun making these changes where we can. Sometimes, it's also the small stuff, too. Not bulldozing your way through life, but rather appreciating the small things. My wife laughs at me. Jennifer said the other day, it's like you were outside picking up dog poop in the backyard for a while. I said, well, it's kind of cathartic for me. I get to walk around and think about the things that are important to me. And she's like, well, you're picking up poop? And I said, well, it's an opportunity to, a little me time. And she laughed. She's like, yeah, well, I'll figure out something else to do when I need some me time. Maybe I'll go shopping or some retail therapy or whatever. But what I've realized is that sometimes it's just the small things that help you refocus and get away from the minutia of, all the deadlines and the processes and the things that you need to answer to or people you need to answer to and the things you need to accomplish. Sometimes it's nice to just take a step back and take account of the things that are most important to you. All right, so how can you improve when you have competing priorities, when there's not enough support around you, when there's not enough time in the day? We all struggle with this problem. I am not unique. I'm sure you guys probably feel this much better that that you're not unique in that regard either. So maybe pick one thing that you can work on to improve. And maybe when you leave here, you'll be able to address it and be slightly better for it. The last thing that I'd like to talk to you about today is G for go for it. So, life is short, no pun intended. All right, pun intended. I would implore you to follow your dreams, work them to make them a reality, and just make sure you have fun along the way. When we were first married, my wife and I were approached to make our television show. But it wasn't the show that you guys have seen. It was a show about us getting married. It was the things leading up to our marriage, or to the wedding. And what they wanted to do was cover, like me going to the tailor and Jen going to the seamstress to get her dress made, and, what would two little people look like at the altar. And we didn't really find that to be a very redeeming quality show. We thought it was more sensational. It's, objectifying us, making us look like something that was more voyeuristic than anything else. Well, we turned them down. We kind of said, no thanks, we're good. I got my tux, my wife's got her dress, we're happy, we're going to move on. They said, well, can we come back and talk to you a little bit more? I said, sure, come back with whatever ideas you have, and we'll talk about it. So they came back to us. They said, hey, we got a great idea for you. We'd like to follow your personal and professional lives and show a good story that talks about people with disabilities and their ability to overcome and move on and have happy, successful lives. So that kind of sounds, more in line with what we're looking for. But there's another show that's out there already that's kind of like that, called Little People, Big World. So Jennifer's walking through the mall one day, I think it was like Macy's or something, and some kid comes up to her and says, hey, Mom, that's a little person like Little People, Big World. Now, that was a tremendous step forward from the jerk that I interviewed with that called me a midget. And she was like 6. I mean, she barely, knows basic math, and she's, cognizant of what words mean to people. And Jen said, I know we said no, but maybe we should reconsider this whole TV show thing. If they're making an impact like that, maybe we can do something similar. I mean, why not do 2 shows? I mean, CSI has 20 of them, if you figure out something good, do 50 of them. So, and I think TLC's well on their way, but we wound up agreeing to do the show. We said, it's a lot of risk. We have businesses. My wife's been working to have a career in medicine for the past 20 years. And, television isn't exactly always friendly, but it was a risk that we thought was worth taking because the impact it was having with people that were otherwise unfamiliar with what being short was all about, all of a sudden had a different level of respect and appreciation for people, and they were more polite, they were cognizant of what they were saying, and if we could do something similar to that, if we could do that for one more person, it'd be worth it. So. All right, so here's the last gratuitous picture for you. This is in our little production office, and we were doing some interviews, and the kids decided that it was much more fun to play with the cameras than be in front of them. And so I just want to leave you guys with this parting note. We've discussed a lot today. I think that this organization is fantastic for people like me, people like you that are looking for advice, education, guidance, support, friends. And it's a pleasure to be a part of it. I want you guys to take what you want from my talk, whether it's giving it a try, doing something, being bold, whether it's not listening to the no's, ignoring the negative, or if it's just going for it, if it's just putting it all out there and taking a chance. Sometimes that's what you have to do in order to discover something amazing can happen. And thank you very, very much for having me today. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.